We are live. I'm so excited. I'm here with Steve Taubman. And first, I have to go into the settings on Facebook. So excited. So excited because we want it to be public. And so people can comment. You guys, I want you to comment, ask questions, interact. I love that. So here we go. And there we are. You look so good. Settings. Edit audience. Public. Save. And there we go. Okay, so going back to StreamYard. Welcome, Steve. Welcome to Life on Track.
Hi, Erin. What a pleasure to be here.
It's so exciting. So I had you on my Life on Track Summit back in 2020. I can't believe that was 4 years ago.
That's not possible.
That's crazy.
We must be wrong.
I know. The time flies. It just goes like that. You know, but I'm glad that Eric Swanson introduced us and that I got to know you and we became friends. So, all right, everybody, welcome to Life on Track, the TV show that's all about helping you get your life on track, obviously, personally and professionally. So it's not about getting on my track or Steve's track. It's about you getting on your track with your God-given gifts and utilizing them. All right, so let's get right into it, Steve. All right, I'm going to introduce you by reading your bio because I don't want to leave anything out. All right, so hang on. Okay, so our guest today has an eclectic and unusual background. After 14 years running one of nation's top chiropractic clinics, he became a sought-after corporate entertainer. He went on to write a best-selling book called UnHypnosis and a series of other critically acclaimed personal growth programs. He now travels the globe sharing insight and wisdom about how to live an inspired life while entertaining groups with his mind-boggling hypnosis and mind-reading shows. So cool, we're going to talk about that. To date, Dr. Steve has hypnotized over 30,000 people. His fans include sports figures, business leaders, and A-list movie stars. He's been seen on national television, has been featured in major magazines, and has shared the stage with top business speakers like Jack Canfield and the late Zig Ziglar. Here today to share insights into the top characteristics of highly successful people, please welcome best-selling author, international speaker, physician, mindfulness coach, transformational hypnotist, and a very, very nice guy, Dr. Steve Taubman. Welcome.
Thank you. That introduction makes it sound like I can't hold a job.
That or you're extremely gifted.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I'll lean in that direction if I can.
Yes, because it's facts. It's true. So, Steve, you know, the first question that I always ask every expert that I have on, whether it's my summits back from 2010 to 2013, I was on Blog Talk Radio with my show Onward and Upward. I always, for many years, have asked the same question. How did you get into doing what you're doing and why?
Okay. Well, when you say what I'm doing, let's see if we could pin that part down first. I'll say this. Okay. So as you know, for many years, I was a sports medicine doc. I had a chiropractic practice, and somewhere in the midst of all that, my life started to shift and change, and my motivation started to change. And then in the midst of all that, I took an interest in magic, and I started performing magic kind of on the side, which was super fun. And when people ask me about that for years, I've always said the way that I got into magic was that I had just gotten out of a relationship and I needed something to do with my hands.
Oh, God. Okay.
So that was the first trigger of that was, really, doing something that was, that really occupied my mind and my body too, right? So you really have to put yourself into fully. And then all the joy that came out of that, all the, the wonder that came out of being able to astonish people and make people laugh and all that. And that became a much more empowering, positive experience for me than being in practice at that point. I was actually I was just sort of souring on the whole practice thing. I didn't know why. But I'd gotten to a point where, I had a very busy practice, and I'd go in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And by 9 o'clock, I will have already looked at my watch like 10 times.
Yeah.
So I knew it was, something was amiss. And only looking back at it now from years gone by, do I realize that there was just something in me that needed to not be inside of four walls, just seeing people one at a time, but rather to be in front of people.
Yes.
So that's, that's how I ended up entertaining, doing magic. And then when I finally did give up my chiropractic practice, already having been a magician for some years, I traveled, have some really interesting stories about that I'll share with you. But then when I came back to the US, I was given an opportunity to study hypnosis. And I became a stage hypnotist. And I started doing all those like wild shows. I was the official hypnotist for MTV Spring Break. Dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. And
Wow.
yeah, and then through all that, I was also simultaneously developing my spiritual practices, my meditation, my mindfulness practices. So I had a lot of interest in what makes us tick, how our minds work, what's our relationship with our thoughts and our feelings, and and how do we separate ourselves from the habitual patterns of our own minds. And that was something that I was working with on myself and contemplating. And then there was a pivotal moment in 2002, I think. So this is over 20 years ago now, 2002 or 3, when I was, as I said, the official hypnotist for MTV Spring Break, and I was doing hypnosis shows in Jamaica and Barbados and a few other places. And I had a subject in my show. Now, Erin, I'm sure you've seen hypnosis shows, so they're crazy. You have people. I've got somebody milking a cow, and I've got
Clucking
somebody
like a chicken.
Never did that. Never had anybody cluck like a chicken, but or become any other animal. But I did have. I usually have one guy think he was pregnant, and then I'd have another guy think he was the father. So that's
I made up the clucking like a chicken thing, but that's fun. That's even better.
Funny. Yeah, it's
funnier.
So a lot of really fun stuff. And in this particular show, going back into 2002, I decided to try something I hadn't tried before. So I chose one of the subjects on stage in the middle of a show, and I said, when you wake up, 3 things are going to happen. I said, number 1, you don't believe you're hypnotized, even though you are. I said, number 2, this is the worst show you've ever seen, and you are pissed at me. And I said, number 3, there's an invisible wall 3 feet in front of you. And this was a total, I didn't know what was going to happen, but it just seemed like a good time to try something out. So I woke everybody up and I said, how's everybody doing? And this one guy screams, you suck.
Oh, that's so funny.
I said, what's the problem? He goes, the show's terrible. I said, well, then leave. And the guy gets up, he starts walking and he hits the wall and he starts pushing and pushing and he can't get through it. And he finally exhausts himself and he sits back down and he crosses his arms like this. He's pouting. I said, what's the problem? He goes, nothing. I said, are you hypnotized? He goes, no. I said, are you having fun? He says, no. I said, well, then why don't you leave? And the guy thinks for a minute and he goes, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction.
Wow.
And that was a pivotal moment because what I realized, Erin, was that that's all of us.
Mm-hmm.
We all have somewhere we want to go. Like he wanted to leave. He wanted out. And we start moving toward our goals, our dreams, our vision of the future. And then we hit our invisible walls.
Right.
And then we push and we push and we push and we don't get through. Then when we get exhausted, we sit back down and we make excuses for why we didn't achieve what we wanted. But the interesting thing is that it happened to him because he was hypnotized, but didn't know that he was hypnotized.
Right.
Didn't see himself as hypnotized. That's true of all of us. That's why I wrote the book UnHypnosis, because we're all hypnotized. We've all been programmed. We're all, sleepwalking through life. We're half asleep. We operate on certain pattern behaviors and thoughts, and those pattern behaviors and thoughts define the way that our lives go. And we've got to get outside of that. But in order to get outside of that, you've got to wake up. So that's where the kind of spiritual piece comes in.
I love this because Napoleon Hill talks about hypnotic rhythm. Right. So, but that's what you're talking about, hypnotic rhythm. And we're just programmed. The subconscious mind is so powerful. Like you tapped into that man's subconscious mind and got him to think in that program. Everybody on the planet has a subconscious mind and they're running their life on a program. They have a pulse, they have a soul, and they have a subconscious mind, the superconscious. But we're all running a program, based on where repeatedly autosuggestion, what we're repeatedly thinking and speaking that leads to how we're acting, you know, and then the character we're building and the future we're creating, because we're all conscious creators. I love how you took it and flipped it and wrote the book UnHypnosis, right? UnHypnosis. So, oh God, how fun. So it is so fun. So how did you work with the people through the book? You know, and I know you had programs around it as well. Give me like 3 to 5 things that you did to deprogram, reprogram, you know, get the whole unhypnosis thing going on for the people that were studying with you.
Yeah. So the first thing that I realized was, you know, as soon as I framed it as unhypnosis, the first thing I realized was that programming doesn't work unless you've already first deprogrammed.
Right.
It's like that there, you know, you're trying to put something on top of something else. And that just doesn't work. It, you know, it usually backfires and it's exhausting. So the first layer of that for a lot of people is affirmations. I'm just going to keep repeating something over and over again until I finally browbeat my subconscious into a new way of thinking. But that's a very inefficient way to transform the subconscious because you're fighting with something else. So as soon as I say, I'm great, there's another part of me that's saying, no, you're not. And it's just they're pushing up against each other. So first I've got to address that part. So we talk about creating receptivity. First step is creating receptivity, becoming receptive, being, you know, opening yourself through meditation or hypnosis or something that, you know, most people who are successful have found some way of finding inner silence, some gap in the constant thread of thought.
Right.
So that's the first step. It's just finding that place in which you're receptive. The second step is being able to evaluate and analyze and notice. See, it's all noticing again, like mindfulness. It's the noticing of those patterns that are playing out inside of you. And what do you do with those patterns? So we have thoughts and we have feelings, right? And the thoughts create the feelings, and then the feelings create the thoughts, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So if I say I'm happy and I'm not feeling happy, then I'm incongruent. I'm not able, you know, I'm not getting through it. So what I need to do is to not only be aware of the words that I'm saying, but also the feeling they're creating, and recognize that that feeling is now reinforcing the thought. One makes the other. So I talk about it like a
wait. Let me just interrupt for 1 second to expand upon what you're saying, because it's so powerful, and you're dropping so many golden nuggets. And the people in the audience, you know, I want them to just sit in what you just said for a second, because, you know, like, we are electromagnetic beings. We're thoughts and we're feelings. So electro with the thoughts, magnetic with the feelings, and if it's not in harmony, you know, then there is incongruence. So if you're, for the people listening, if you're doing the affirmations, but you're really not feeling it, it's a waste of time. You know, like, you have to do it until you feel it. Don't just say a few things, stop and go about your day. Say these affirmations literally until you feel it. It's like going into gratitude and just saying things you're grateful for. But if you don't feel it, it's not working for you. And the mind is like a vacuum. Like you said, you know, like, if you try to put something new without taking things away, it's just stacking, and that's not going to help. We have to, like you said, deprogram. And again, the mind is like a vacuum, so it'll suck something in right away again. And that's where you help them get the positive, the things that I don't like positive and negative. Empowering and disempowering are the words I prefer. So more empowering thoughts, you know, so that they'll speak the empowering words that lead to the empowering actions. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. So what you're saying makes sense. The piece of that really resonates most for me about what you just said is that the recognition that the experience doesn't necessarily come immediately. So, you know, because we all get discouraged. I teach people to meditate, and they, you know, so many people say, oh, I tried meditating, but I can't do it. Well, why can't you do it? Oh, because I kept having thoughts. Well, duh.
Right.
That's basically what's going to happen. So, but meditating then becomes like exercising. It's like, you know, somebody starts exercising and says, well, I tried exercising, but every time I picked up the weights, I had to put them back down again. Well, yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's repetition, right? It's
Right.
developing strength. So it's the same thing with meditation. It's like recognizing that if I'm sitting here and I'm looking for quietude within, and my voices are yelling at me, that I can't then take that as evidence that this doesn't work. I've got to instead just sort of like weather the storm.
Right.
And of course, if you can get a relatively quiet mind, then you begin to detach yourself from that stuff.
So
Like there are
cool.
times in our lives when that's overwhelming, when it's just all over you, you can't find your way out of it. And that's, then you got to find other tools or work harder or get some support from others. But the reality is that on the other side of that, at least presumably, we're all, we are all blessed. We are all capable of having a life that works. We're all
Yes.
capable despite what those dark voices are saying or those dark feelings are saying, um, there's a path, right? There's a path that takes us
Yeah.
from here to there.
I love this because we all are conscious creators.
Yeah.
People may not want to believe it. They might want to believe that these are the cards I was dealt and life sucks. And, I don't like my job, but I'm stuck here. Like, you're consciously creating that. You can consciously create something else as opposed to letting life drive you and bing bonging all over the place. And it's going to be a bumpy ride. But when you get into the driver's seat of your own life, and you have the steering wheel, and every now and then you let go and let God, you know what I mean? Like let God take the wheel, and that's even better. That's so fun. And that's just what manifesting is, it's just when you listen, everybody has bad days, I mean, we're human beings. We're supposed to experience the whole range of emotions. Otherwise, we're not living a full life, and we're suppressing and oppressing, and that's not healthy either. What I do when I'm having a bad moment, right, is I recognize it because it doesn't feel good. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel resentment. I don't want to, you become very quickly aware of like, oh no, I'm in that place. I'm not in flow. So you become aware of it. And my thing, and you, myself, so many people teach about gratitude, is I literally force myself. I'm intentional about stopping the voices, the dark voices, and I just think of all the things I'm grateful for. And again, I wait until my body is in congruence with my thoughts. And I'll even say it out loud. If I'm driving in the car, whatever, people, well, now you can talk on the phone in the car, so they're not going to think you're crazy. But I'll say it out loud. Back when we were kids, they would have thought you were crazy. But I mean, I will just keep saying it and saying it and saying it and really coming up with everything that I'm grateful for, because that's the bridge from fear, anything negative, to love, which is anything positive, is gratitude. So once my body feels the gratitude, then I know I made the shift, and I'm out of that dark place, because otherwise it's like a rabbit hole, and
The other part of the other piece of that, I've spent a lot of time learning and practicing mindfulness meditation. And in mindfulness meditation, what you're doing is you're observing the sensations in your body.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you're observing sensation, at first we're very, we make big distinctions between the sensations we like and the sensations we don't like. Right. But I think it was the third Zen patriarch said to just, to separate what you like from what you don't like is a disease of the mind. It's like you're trying to push away something, and this pushing away stuff, it's like what you resist persists.
Yes.
So instead, what you learn how to do and you practice is, I wake up with this dark feeling inside or whatever, and can I sit with it? Can I just let the sensation be a sensation without letting that sensation trigger a set of thoughts about what a horrible person I am, or how hopeless I am, or whatever? It's like this feeling comes along with a lot of thoughts that could then reinforce this feeling.
And you don't have to be attached to it.
Yeah, so that's it. So they're not attaching. Sometimes leaning in helps you not attach. It's just the analogy I use for that is, if you're, well, I've got a couple of great analogies for this. One of them is, if you look at a billboard, like the old billboards, the ones that were painted, right?
Yeah.
And from wherever you're looking at the billboard, it's this very hard image. It's a very clear image, right? But as you get closer to it, it's just little dots of paint. Right. It's so you get so close that you can't see it anymore. It's the same thing with your emotions from where you're standing, they're big and they're scary and there's no way out of them, but they're really just made up of little things, right? So so it's that willingness to just sit with sensation and not let it scare you out of whatever, whatever choice you were making, like, for example, affirmations, or just doing some, some meditation, getting quiet. It's like there's that feeling. I'm not going to fight with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to notice it. It's just a feeling. It's just a sensation. In fact, I like the word sensation better than feeling, because feeling, you have to put a thought into it. If it's a feeling, it's like, well, it's an emotion. So it's like
You emotionalize the thought. Yeah.
you're emotionalizing it. But if it's just a sensation, I feel it here, I feel it here, that's a much more, you could detach from that more easily.
I love this. Jon Kabat-Zinn introduced me to mindfulness meditation in 1991, and it was a game changer. In the book Full Catastrophe Living, there was a cutout snail mail, for cassette tape.
Yeah.
And it was a game changer. That and Shaki Gawain's creative visualization. So when I was doing Jon Kabat-Zinn and then Shaki Gawain, I became unstoppable. It was with the cancer diagnosis, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
The body scan and being, like you said, being aware of the sensations. I mean, I just love this. You're so good. You're so good. So there was something I wanted you to talk about, how you can be empowered by your perception. Yeah.
Can you, so explain what you mean by your perception, like what you're seeing, what you think you're seeing, or?
Well, like in your mind magic show that you're going to have coming up, you're going to be in the mental miracles for smart people and their friends, and we're going to get into that also.
Yeah.
But you were mentioning how, you can be empowered by your perception. In other words, everything is perception. Like how we see, nobody sees the same couch the same way. Everybody's perception is different on how they see the world, because they're conscious creators of their own world, right? Even though we're on the same planet. So perception is based on how we see something, how we feel about something, what we think about something. Now, we could either be empowered or disempowered by what we're looking at, So,
yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me play with that a little bit. So I think the answer that I would give to that is, if you're, they say you see the world not as it is, but as you are, right?
Right.
So if I'm seeing a lot of negative around me, it's like, my training, my habitual patterns over the last several years of practicing is to know, as soon as I see that everything around me is kind of shitty, that's me.
Right. You've been focusing on shitty stuff for too long that you started to now see it everywhere. Yeah.
So the empowerment is the opportunity to make that choice, is the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to shift my attention away from oh, look at that, I've got a Band-Aid on my hand. It's so weird. I don't know. I got some kind of weird little, I don't know if it's like poison ivy, some little vesicle over there. So I'm just keeping it covered.
You're smart. You're smart.
So it's those moments. It's those moments when, my perception, it's like, I think it was Ram Dass said, every forget is a remember. Every time you forget, then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that I am limitless. I forgot, but now that I'm noticing that I forgot, that means I remember, right? And every time I perceive the world in a disempowering way, that's a moment when I could be empowered by realizing, oh, I'm seeing the world in a disempowering way. I know, because I've got the ability to analyze, even if I don't feel good, I could still use my intellect to remind me. To remind me that this is not reality. It's like, like you're at a movie, it's a scary movie. And, if it's getting really scary, there's at least a part of you, hopefully, that could say, oh, it's just a movie.
Right. Right. And we have the reason and we have the will to be able to change these things. I mean, we've been gifted with these mental faculties that are just amazing, and most people don't even realize that they have that. And you can be empowered by change. You have the, and you have the power to change what it is that you want to change, so you can empower yourself, which is what we really, every single one of us needs to learn how to do, not count on somebody else to empower us. And Steve, why don't you talk about when you do empower yourself? You and I always speak about this. when you do empower yourself, you can't be controlled by the 3D world, by the outer world, because you're authentic, you're living by the golden rule. You're showing up as the best version of you. You've tapped into your hidden power, and that's what being empowered means, and you can't be controlled. You have to kind of dodge some things, bows and the arrows, from the outer world, and the challenges and the obstacles, they always come, but you're in control. So can you speak into that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story. When I was at the tail end of my chiropractic practice, I knew I was selling my practice, and I knew I was going to be taking a trip. That's all I knew at that point. And hey, Wayne. So I knew that I was going to be taking this trip and doing something new, and I didn't know what that was going to be. And I ended up reading a book. The book was called How to Win by Quitting, which is a great name.
Yes.
By a guy by the name of Jerry Stocking. And I reached out to the author, and he was kind enough to give me some of his time. We spoke for like an hour on the phone. And he said, what are you going to do now that you've sold your chiropractic practice? And I said, well, I'm going on this trip to Guatemala for a few months. I said, and after that, I've been doing magic, so I'm probably going to, become a magician. And he goes, wrong. And I said, what? He goes, never like redesign your life before you've left the previous life. He said, first, like jump into the void.
Right.
Be willing to not know. Be willing to not have.
Yeah, that's where all the magic happens, in the unknown. Yeah.
So I took that to heart, and because I went to Guatemala, and it was one of those leaps of faith. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I just knew that I was putting one foot in front of the other, just following my spiritual nose. And I got there, and on the second or third day in Guatemala, I noticed down a side street in Antigua, this little cobblestone street, and I noticed a chiropractic office on the side street. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I just left my practice, and I should go meet the guy, right? So I walked into this office, and the chiropractor who owned the practice, his name was Todd. Clearly not a Spaniard. He was, he was an American expatriate. Right. And I introduced myself. I said, hey, I'm Steve. I'm a chiropractor from the United States. And he said, oh my God, I haven't had an adjustment in months. Can you give me an adjustment? So I said, sure. So we go out and we go into his treatment room, and I adjust him. And then we come back out to the waiting room, and sitting in the waiting room is another guy who wasn't there before. And there's a guy sitting there, and he stands up and he puts his hand out to shake. He's not sure who the guy is, me or Todd. He says, hi, I was just walking by. I saw your sign. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Steve. I'm a chiropractor from the United States. I said, wait a minute. I'm Steve. I'm a chiropractor from the United States.
Right.
I said, where do you practice? He goes, well, I don't, I just sold my practice. I said, me too. I said, how long did you practice for? He said, 14 years. I said, me too.
Huh.
So we decided we're going to go get some lunch and talk about this. We went out on the street, and it was a sunny day, and we both reached into our backpacks to take out a hat. We take out the same hat.
Oh my God.
So this is getting
freaking
bizarre. And then we went back to his place so he could pick up his wallet before we went to lunch. And sitting on his dresser in the room that he was staying in was the book, How to Win by Quitting. And I said, I read that book and I talked to the author. He said, me too.
Oh my God.
This goes on and on and on for like weeks. All these coincidences that come up, how long we had been married, the relationship we had with our ex-wives, the fact that we're both Geminis, and all these things happen over the course of several weeks, during which we were meeting and going our separate ways, and then re-meeting in coincidental ways. I ended up going back to the States a couple months later, and then I planned a trip across country. And I'm a private pilot. I used to have a plane. I was going to fly across country, and my first stop was going to be to visit him in Bozeman, Montana, which is where he lived. And I was talking to the guy who bought my chiropractic practice. And I said, oh yeah, I'm going on this trip. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, my first stop is Bozeman, Montana. He says, I used to live in Bozeman. I said, really? I said, well, I've got a friend there. He used to be a chiropractor. He goes, what's his name? I said, Steve Forte. He goes, Steve Forte? He was my chiropractor. And my best friend bought his practice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's chilling. And that's about half the story.
So okay, so how did, don't end it there.
Yeah.
So how did, like, what happened in the end? Like, what was the reason? Like, I believe God put people in your life for a reason. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know exactly what the reason was, but I could say that that to me it was an affirmation of this. You were asking before about what happens when you just surrender and you empower yourself to go forward. And the point that I'm making is that there's a lot of magic out there.
Right.
There are a lot of these things that we would call coincidences, and when they pile up on top of each other, it becomes harder and harder to call them coincidences.
Right. I
But
don't believe in coincidences.
yeah, so serendipity or whatever you want to call it, there's this there's the flow. You talked about being in a flow, and and I think that's the whole follow your spiritual nose thing, that if you're on the right track, if you're not operating out of fear, but you're operating out of adventure or love or curiosity, then the universe starts playing games with you.
Yes, I was
Very,
just
very
thinking that.
interesting.
The
And
universe had a field day with you.
it has a field day with you. And of course, I know we're probably moving in this direction anyway, but I'm a magician and a mind reader, and I do this kind of stuff. And I do it because it's, it gives you a chance to see what it feels like when the universe is playing with you.
Yeah.
It's like stuff is happening that's hard to explain, and it doesn't really fit into our usual chit chat in our brains. And so we've got to break our pattern. It's like, what are the things that create the gap in your constant endless flow of thinking that you're using to justify who you think you are and what you believe to be true? How do you interrupt that?
And that's the power of meditation also. It stops that and you go into nothingness.
Yeah.
You detach from everything, you quiet everything. There's no thinking, there's no, you go like Joe Dispenza, you go into no thing. And Wayne, I love Wayne Russell. You must constantly live from the state of mind you are affirming. And it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's law. It's universal law that you will be living from the state of mind that you're affirming. And he said, we are miracle makers. That's my nickname. The doctors gave me that nickname in the 90s, and it's been the nickname ever since.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wanted to give everybody a background on who you are, what you do, what you've done, and I want to get into the mind magic. So, and then talk about your show and everything else, so let's go to the mind magic and then the mental miracles for smart people and their friends. This is the show that Steve has here on Long Island in Lindenhurst, and I'm super excited about it.
I brought a poster too.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah.
And I was in Starbucks with Steve about a month ago, and I asked him about some secrets about magic, and he was like, I can't tell you. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You can't tell me?
And that's
I'm not going to tell anybody.
It's funny because, I think the thing that determines whether somebody is good at what I do or not good at what I do is, can I do this and not piss you off? Can I do this and have you like really shift into a state of delight? Can I do something that you don't understand or that doesn't make any sense or that seems impossible, and have your response be one that creates a sense of freedom and happiness and like delight?
I've never seen anybody get pissed.
No, I mean, it does happen, but there are people who are, and you see this if you do what I do for as long as I've done it. You're going to come across some people who are, who tense up a little bit, not necessarily get pissed. Nobody's like, I've never had anybody yell at me or anything like that.
Right.
But to feel a sense of lightness versus a sense of tension, sometimes magic, sometimes, these kinds of things create some tension. But my job is to move you through that to the other side. It's almost like bursting a bubble. Like we've been talking all this time about how we create this very, bubble-like experience of our lives based on what we think the reality that reality is. And it's very limiting. It keeps us from really breathing out, sighing, just feeling like part of the world. So my job is to like push you up against that until it pops, right? To create a moment of astonishment. And that moment of astonishment is such that you give up trying to make sense. Give up trying to figure stuff out, being troubled that you don't understand everything. And just a glimpse of that experience is all it takes to lighten up. And I've seen people lighten up in such remarkable ways because of this experience, because that's what it's meant to be. That's why, you know, back in ancient times, the magician was the magus, was the healer.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that the magician was the healer.
We have things like Merlin or somebody like that, or, you know, Rasputin,
Right.
these people who, you know, were giving people a glimpse of something beyond their day-to-day reality.
So let me ask you a question. You're doing a magic show. People are loving it, right? People are engaged. What is the biggest reaction that you remember that an audience member had from a magic act that you did that they were just completely blown away?
I don't know. I mean, I like when people are laughing so hard that they're crying. I see that a lot. Every now and then somebody will scream. I like that scream, you know, like a happy kind of a scream. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I also was doing the hypnosis shows for such a long time. And with the hypnosis shows, you know, you'd see the same thing and people would just like lose it. Just like at the end of the show, it was almost like every ounce of stress in their lives was gone. They were just, you know, they just laughed themselves out of whatever state they had been stuck in.
That's magic.
Yeah. And that's magic. And that's so joyful. The best story about that for me was I was doing a hypnosis show back in the like early 2000s, 2004, 2005, something like that, at a place called the Canadian Club, which was like a you know, America, what do you call it, VFW hall or one of those kind of things. It was, you know, a community kind of
Columbus, right?
Yeah, like a Knights of Columbus, one of those. And I did the hypnosis show, and at the end of the show, this big burly guy came up to me and he was crying, and he put his arms around me. He gave me a hug. And it was like, he was like a sort of macho man's man kind of guy. And it was a very strange reaction to get from somebody like that. And he stopped and he looked at me. He said, I need to tell you that I'm a firefighter. My son was a firefighter. He died in 9/11.
Oh, God.
He said, this was the first time I was able to laugh since that. And it just let something go. He just let something go.
Right. Like releasing the valve.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a gift. You know, you went from the chiropractic practice where it was one-to-one, you know, to where now you're just impacting lives one to many in a joyful, laughing. Humor is so healing on so many levels. I mean, humor, I believe it was part of the cure for cancer. I believe that humor just is so good for the soul, you know, and so you're really like the doctor of magic. Hey, I just coined that for you. Get that URL, drofmagic.com. Yeah.
And you know, thankfully everything
magic.
And that's never far from my consciousness. I feel like what I do has a healing element to it. I've always felt that way. You know, I came from being a healer in a very standard way. And that, you know, when I perform, I'm kind of watching for something to happen, you know, for something to release. And so I feel like I feel like it's healing. And when I, you know, because you know about my speaking career, and I've, you know, done a lot of speaking, and there's often an element of either some magic or some hypnosis or certainly some humor or some stories. And all that stuff is fun and lighthearted, but it's also, it always feeds the message, right? It always goes back to, you know, the core message that I try to share, that I wrote in, you know, when I wrote on hypnosis, it was like right there. And it's been said over and over again since then, is don't believe everything you think.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so that's kind of the core message. So it's like, if I'm doing something that, you know, that you're that's inexplicable to you. That, this can't happen, but it did. It's like, well, that shakes your confidence that everything you think is absolutely true.
Right.
And so everything I'm doing is like, recognizing that there's this, it's almost like there's layers of your being. There's the thinking level, which is you thinking without noticing that you're thinking. And then there's you're thinking about the fact that you're thinking.
Right.
And then there's like, you're actually starting to get some quietness and you're not thinking at all anymore. And then there's like this sort of like sense of infinite possibility. Right. And it's those could all exist at the same time, right? You could be aware of yourself, but at the same time, not bound by it.
You could even step back and just become the observer of the person you are thinking. Like, in other words, you're still you, but you're outside of you thinking, looking in on you being aware of the thoughts. And you could actually say to yourself, cancel that thought, reject that thought. Like, what are you thinking? Why are you thinking? You can literally be the observer of your thought and intercede, and I love this. I love this. And then, of course, mental miracles for smart people and their friends is part of your.
So that was, I put that on my poster because I just thought it was so damn funny. I put it right there. It's mental miracles for smart people and their friends.
That's where I got it from because I'm a smart person. With my friends.
So, but your friends maybe not so much, but you'll bring them to the show. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking we'd just create this thing among friends. It's like, who's the smart one and who's the friend of the smart one?
Oh my God, you're so funny. And then let me get into how people can get it. All right. So Mind Magic, it's Friday. So we're not done yet, but I'm just going to put this out there because I want to talk to you some more. But so Mind Magic Friday, September 13th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern here on Long Island, New York at Studio Theater of Long Island, which is in Lindenhurst. Really cool. So for all of my Long Islanders, and there's a lot of you, I would love to meet you there, see you there. And, I mean, you can't even get a stick of gum for $35 these days, it's really everything you're offering.
So two things about this. First of all, it's also the weekend of my 50-year high school reunion.
Oh.
So I'll be on Long Island anyway. I would have been on Long Island anyway to go to my reunion. And a number of people from my graduating class from Massapequa High School.
Yes.
1974, class of 74, missed Jerry Seinfeld by 2 years. He was a class of 72. But a lot of my friends are, people that were classmates, they were aware of this show. So some of them are coming to the show as well, which is really fun. And the other thing is that when I was 21 years old, I performed in Studio Theater in Lindenhurst. I did 2 shows there. I did You Can't Take It With You and Steam Bath. And those were both like sort of semi-professional theater back then. And so it just so happens that I'm going to be back there now 47 years later.
Wow. And you were in good company in Massapequa. You had David Corbin, who I love, our mutual friend, David Corbin. I don't know what year he graduated.
I think he's a year older than me, or maybe 2 also.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And who else? The Baldwins.
Yep. Alec, the whole Baldwin clan, they were all, they were at the Berner High School, the other high school in Massapequa, and their dad taught at Massapequa High School. And, as you said, Jerry Seinfeld, or as I said, Jerry Seinfeld was, you want to hear a great Jerry Seinfeld story?
Sure. Okay. I love this.
Okay.
I love Seinfeld.
This is a brand new story.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of Jerry Seinfeld. I literally saw him at one of his very first performances back in 1976. I took a year off of college between my sophomore and junior year and traveled. And in my travels, I bumped into a guy in Tucson, Arizona, who was an aspiring comedian by the name of Rich Hall, who became pretty famous.
Right.
And Rich came back to Massapequa with me and lived with me for almost a year. We used to go into the city because he was performing at the comedy clubs. And that was right when Jerry Seinfeld started. So among other like amazing, comedians at the time. So I always felt this sort of, a sense of camaraderie. I mean, I never really knew him, but I knew who he was, and I knew him from the hallways of Massapequa High School, and we had the same English teacher. Mrs. Schaefer. So Mrs. Schaefer was this rare kind of teacher, the kind who doesn't act like a teacher, like they're better than you, or like, if you misbehave, you're
going right to hell. Yeah.
hell. She was like a real person with a real sense of humor. And if you said something that was a little wise-assy, but it was funny, she'd actually find it funny.
Right.
So she was great. I love this woman. And after I graduated, I obviously lost touch with her for many years, but about 20 years later, I was speaking with somebody I knew from my neighborhood from years and years earlier. And she just so happened to have made a contact with Roberta Schaefer and her husband, Dick, who lived part of the year down in Florida and part of the year in Plainfield, Vermont. Now, bear in mind, I'm from Long Island, so was she. But she lived in Vermont, and I live in Vermont.
Right.
So I reached out. I got her phone number, and I reached out to her. It's like, probably, I don't know, let's see, 38, probably about 30 years ago, maybe that happened. And, there's Ernie.
I see my grandson.
Hey, Ernie, want to say hi?
Hey, Ernie. Hi, Ernie.
So I reached out to her, and we ended up reconnecting, and I started going and visiting them in Plainfield, Vermont. They came to visit me here in Burlington, Vermont, and lots of laughs. Just a brilliant, wonderful person. Her husband was a potter, and I've got a lot of pottery on my shelves over there too. So it was a really special relationship. And then we kind of lost touch at one point, and that's probably about 5 years ago or a little more.
Okay.
And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got something like an email from Juliana. That was my, that person I knew from my neighborhood. And it turned out it was just a hack thing. She didn't really write it. It was just like a hacked, it said it was her, like an invitation or something, but it made me get in touch with her. Yeah. And I contacted her and I said, hey, by the way, I haven't spoken with Roberta Schaefer in years. Is she still alive? She said, oh yeah, tomorrow's her 92nd birthday. So that was about 2 weeks ago. Wow. And the 92nd birthday. So I called her, and of course, Dick is gone now. He died a few years back. She's living in an assisted living facility in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we just had this fantastic conversation. She's 92, but she's still funny and smart and remembers everything from high school and was like joking about stuff I did and stuff Jerry Seinfeld did and yada, yada, yada. I got off the phone with her and I thought, oh, I've got to get Jerry Seinfeld to call her.
Oh, yeah.
So I did. I contacted. It was a bit of a kind of detective process because I got in touch with somebody I know in town here who lives across the street from Jerry's in-laws. They live in Vermont. They live in Burlington. And I couldn't reach them, but then I thought, let me check Facebook, and I found the in-law, and I got in touch with him, and I told him the story, the father-in-law. And he called me, this is just about a week ago, and he said, I don't know how to forward your Facebook message, but here's Jerry's email address, and he's expecting your email. So I wrote to Jerry Seinfeld, and I said, here's Roberta Schaefer's information. She remembers you. I'm sure you remember her. And she's 92, and it would be great if you guys get in touch with each other. So about 2 days ago, I got an email from Jerry Seinfeld saying, I got in touch with Roberta Schaefer, and she was, as you said, just as smart and funny as ever. We had this great conversation. We were remembering these interesting things about the high school, and there, by the way, there's a Hall of Fame display case, and I'm not in it.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, and then I contacted her. And I got her side of the story about talking to him, and it was hilarious.
That's amazing.
Great story.
That is absolutely amazing. I love Seinfeld. Yeah. Eric and I have watched so many, like during the pandemic and stuff like that. We would just watch the repeats, the reruns of Seinfeld. Yeah. I just love. What a great show.
Brilliant show. He wrote every one of them on a yellow legal pad. 187 episodes. Wrote them out.
Wow. Wow. Priceless. Yeah. Priceless. I have a quick story about, so I grew up in Brooklyn until I was 16, moved to Garden City, Long Island when I was a junior in high school. When I was 16, it was very different, a little bit of an adjustment, but I loved both, and I merged the two because, we also had houses in Breezy Point where both sets went. So, it wasn't that bad. I was able to bring both sets of friends together. But then I got my first apartment in Franklin Square. right? So I had the second floor apartment of a house, and then there was a couple that had the second floor apartment of the house directly across the street from me. And I got to be friends with them and have conversations with them. And, the husband was always traveling, so I spent a lot of time talking to the wife. Her name is Dee. And so we got to be close. We got to be close friends. And I'd have these conversations with Jim, when he wasn't traveling. One time he asked me, Erin, I'm not sure if I want to go to California, if I want to go to New York, when we were thinking about moving again. And so we'd have these conversations. He was very spiritual also, in the 90s. And so I'm in my apartment and they're knocking at my door. It's like an emergency. So I'm like, is everything okay? And they were like, could you drive Jim into the city? He's got an interview with Saturday Night Live, Jim Brewer. And I was like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, aren't you a traveling salesman? And he looks at Dee and he's like, because he never told me what he did. And Dee never told me what he did. We just had friendly, normal conversations about life. We weren't talking about business. And so he looked at Dee and Dee goes, I don't tell people what you do. And so long story short, his limo ended up coming as we were going to get into the car. And again, everybody knows he got the job on Saturday Night Live for years when he was Go Boy and Joe Pesci and all that kind of stuff. So we danced in the street in Franklin Square when he got the job. And yeah, I love those two. And then of course life, we had kids, at the same time. So we stayed in touch for many, many years.
Yeah.
And then it became Christmas cards, and we just but I have to reach out to them again because I love those two.
Yeah.
People. So you just actually sparked something in me that I've got to rekindle with them as well.
And that's
so funny.
Exactly. And this whole conversation might have been just for that purpose, to remind you to make that contact.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. Cause I mean, they were such, and still are in my heart, such good friends, really, really good friends. So, all right, let's get back to your mind magic.
Okay.
Which is so cool. Mental miracles for smart people and their friends. And so everybody, 7:30 on September 13th at the Studio Theater of Long Island in Lindenhurst. I'm going to be there. I'm hoping that as many of my Long Island friends can go there as well. I mean, it sounds like such a fun time, it's magic and laughter. And I mean, it's going to be so good. So, all right. So how do people reach out to you? I have your email.
And you can certainly email me. If you're interested in knowing more about the show or getting tickets, the easiest way to do that is to go to mindmagic.guru. And on that website, there's a button. There's a couple of buttons that you can push that'll take you to the ticket portal.
Perfect.
And once you get to the ticket portal, you'll see a little bit more about it and whatnot. But yeah, I've been doing this show now, this particular incarnation of this show, for a little over a year. And it's drawn from all these other things that I've done over many years. And I put this thing together and now I'm taking it on the road. So I've done it a number of times in Vermont and a little bit in New York, down in Virginia. And then I'm going to be doing the Long Island show. And then I'm heading out in late fall and early winter out west. And I'm doing shows in Arizona. I've got one in Indiana, I think. And I'm just sort of building a tour. So if anybody can't be on Long Island but knows of a small theater, because this is really a show designed for a small audience of like 100, maybe up to 150. It's not a big, like the hypnosis shows are for thousands of people. This is a show that's more intimate, which is so fun because people could be involved.
Yes. Yes. Do you actually bring people on the stage and involve
them?
Yeah,
but not against their will.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to make them go into a brick wall or anything like that.
No, and there's no hypnosis in this show. This is all, fully awake and aware. Yeah.
Magic,
Yeah.
and being empowered by magic. And it's so cool. I love magic. I find it fascinating. It's like, how did you do that? It just defies all reason.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's a great gift. I love being able to.
Yes, it is. All right. So that's how they can reach out to you. Yeah. I'm super excited about it. And are there anything on your head of your heart that we didn't talk about that you want to speak about?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I mean, if anybody's interested in knowing more about me and my books and things like that, probably just going to stevetaubman.com, but even if you just go to mindmagic.guru, there'll be a link to the other website. So, that's a good toe in the water. And, of course, I've got UnHypnosis, and then I've got Bulletproof and Buddha in the Trenches, and a few other things that I've written. But, right now my joy has been entertaining, but also injecting the wisdom in the entertainment.
Which is so cool. And look who's joining us in the comments.
Oh my goodness, look who's here.
Eric Swanson.
He's my friend. Good to see you.
Look at the two awesome peeps. Yes. He's the reason why you and I became friends.
That's right.
I love it. He's so generous with his contacts and just bringing people to the forefront and introductions and connections. And
it's almost unbelievable how, like, Eric, he knows so many amazing people, and who are friends and who respect him, and and he's given a platform to a lot of people who are just new in the industry as thought leaders or speakers or whatnot. And we always appreciate that. We in previous events we coached speakers, aspiring speakers, so that they could be better at delivering their message. And that's always fun. So, I think Eric is the ultimate example of give to get. What is no drama, serve others.
Yes, and DSO. And he literally knows everybody.
Yeah.
From Marianne from Gilligan's Island to the gentleman with the blonde hair from Chips to everybody in personal development. I mean, everybody. I got to be friends with Claudia Wells because of Eric, and she was in the movie Back to the Future. She was Jennifer, the girlfriend that Marty was trying to get back to. Claudia, so many amazing people, But I'm not surprised because Eric's like my brother, and he's such a good guy, and he's solid, and he's just one of the best guys that I've met, as well as you. You seriously, you guys, you're amazing.
Well, and that's why we're friends. I mean, we appreciate and respect each other, and we'll continue to do things together. I mean, I was on the Habitude stages for a few years before we were interrupted by COVID, and was out there on the road, promoting the program through speaking. And we'll do more of that, and some of the current incarnation of the work. So.
Yes, and now he has Speaker Hearts. So I spoke on stage. It was his first Speaker Heart since the pandemic, and it was so fun. I spoke on stage with, Eric and John, and then Mark Victor Hansen and Sharon Lecter and so many of the greats, and so many amazing speakers. It was just a great, great day. It was a great weekend. There was trainings and speaking, and then we did a book signing at Barnes & Noble because, of course, we have the book series that we do as well. And it was just a lot of fun. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully I see you at the next one.
Very likely.
Good. All right. So I want everybody to, Darlene says, hey, hello, friends. Hey, Darlene. Hey. All right. Let me get back to the banners with your information.
Okay.
www.mindmagic.guru. Go there. Don't walk, run. Go pick up the tickets. Steve, you are a blessing. And thank you so much for always being a huge asset to the Life on Track series. And this is the TV show. So I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. And for everybody who sees it on my YouTube channel, what do they say? Smash? hit the subscribe button. And this way, you just, and also the notifications so that you see all the different shows that I do. There's so many amazing speakers that I've interviewed through Clarissa Burt. She had the In the Limelight channel, and going out to Amazon Prime and Roku and Apple TV and stuff like that. So I did it for a year back in 2022. And I just had so much fun. I love this. It's so fun. And I love highlighting my friends and, that are making a huge difference, a huge impact in this world. And I appreciate you, my friend. So
I appreciate you. And you guys who are watching or listening, if you are for the first time, make sure you get to be part of this community, because, as you can see, Erin is just like a font of positivity, and you'll get so much out of the experience from her and from all of her guests. So thanks for having me be part of this.
Thank you. Not a bad fun to be. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. All right. Have a great day, everybody. And always remember to live onward and upward. Love you.